Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thanks for joining me today. I talk about self-care a lot, and I talk about it in various contexts, but the reason it comes up so often is because of how important of a role it plays in healing, in being able to really believe and trust fully, to embody your worthiness. And people often struggle with making the connection between doing the things that we think are self-care and how that translates into letting go of the idea that you're not worthy, not deserving, not enough. So today I thought that I would share some thoughts around that. So when we feel unworthy, when we believe that we are unworthy, we tend to do things in our daily lives that reinforce that, whether it's something like not setting boundaries or enforcing them, being around people who just don't help fill us up, not honoring what your mind, your heart, or your body needs. Simple things like drinking enough, to more relaxing kinds of things like taking a day to lay around and not do much, or taking a nice warm bath, getting a massage. Self-care can look a lot of different ways. And I think it's in our cultures, we have this idea often that self-care is something that only people that have a lot of extra financial resources or time resources can really participate in. And while some of the things I just mentioned, like massage and laying around for a whole day, there is some truth to that, but it doesn't have to be those kinds of things. But when we need something, when we desire something, even if it's not conscious, and we deny ourselves that, very deliberately or otherwise, it reinforces that we are not worthy. It reinforces in that moment that we make the decision, conscious or not, to not honor it. In that moment, it reinforces the belief that you're not worthy of it. You're not deserving of it. You're not worthy of the time or the resources that it takes for it. Every time, literally every time. And most of this is happening beyond your conscious awareness. And things that happen beyond our conscious awareness tend to have more impact on us because we don't have the ability to counteract it. So every time you deny something that you want or your body needs, like resting when you are exercising, you get that little cramp and you just keep pushing through it, giving yourself a little bit of a break, backing off a little. If you keep pushing through it, you're reinforcing an idea that you are only worthy if you push through it. That's what strength is. And strength is deserving, but weakness is not. And the opposite of strength is weakness. So when you push through it, you're reinforcing that idea. If you take a break and are not conscious about taking care of yourself, but instead beat yourself up because you perceive yourself as being weak or you failed, well, that reinforces it too. So self-care, in how we use it as a form of healing, is about being intentional, about honoring what you need and what you desire. And sometimes it might be something big, like a vacation. But the majority of it happens in the little everyday moments. And I've talked many times about what self-care can look like. But when you practice it intentionally, when you're mindful about doing it on a daily basis with the really little things, each time you're mindfully doing it, you are kind of chipping away at that significant core belief of not being worthy. So if you recognize that you're thirsty and you take a moment out of your way to go into the kitchen and get something to drink, if you do that mindfully, you are saying to yourself, I'm worthy of this time. My body needs this nourishment. And if you're recognizing that your body needs something, you're honoring your body. And if you are somebody who struggles with your body, its limitations, the way that it looks, taking the time to mindfully take care of your body in some way helps shift that idea as well. So when you go out of your way to go get something to drink because you feel thirsty, or maybe you just recognize that you haven't had anything to drink for a while, so maybe you do it before you even notice feeling thirsty. When you do that mindfully, so acknowledging, okay, I'm nourishing my body. In that moment, you're chipping away. You're acknowledging that you and your body deserve that. If you do something nice for yourself, like sleep in, or go to bed early, or set a boundary, and you are mindful about doing that, then it helps you recognize that you are worthy of that. So the example of sleeping in. If you are feeling tired and you make a choice, maybe the night before or as you wake up in the morning, and you say, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I'm going to give myself a little bit more time. And you do that, you actually say that to yourself, and you do that with the intention that it is self-care because you are worthy of that self-care. It's chipping away at that belief of being unworthy. If you are not conscious of that and you feel tired and maybe you hit the snooze button several times, what you come away with is feeling lazy, feeling that you're not worthy, feeling like you've failed and you're going to lose your job because you can't get out of bed, right? So you still may stay in bed, but you're not doing it as a form of self-care when you're beating yourself up about it. But if you do it instead from a place of honoring that you're tired and you just want to relax a little bit, really enjoy that feeling, especially on a cold morning, just staying under the covers for a few more minutes, giving yourself that time because it feels good. That helps you believe and trust that you are worthy of feeling good, that you're worthy of rest. Recognizing that that warmth feels good to take that extra few minutes before you get on with your day. You're deserving of that time. In the case of setting a boundary, if you try to set a boundary because you're feeling completely overwhelmed and you say, no, I can't do that, and maybe it even comes out as like a level of frustration or anger at somebody, you're not going to feel good about that. It's going to reinforce what you believe about yourself, whether that is that you're wrong, that you're not deserving of setting that boundary, that you have to make other people happy, that bad things are going to happen if you disappoint somebody. If you try to set a boundary from that place, then it's reinforcing those ideas that you're not deserving of that boundary, that there's something wrong with it. But if instead you recognize that you're feeling maybe overextended, or that you keep finding yourself saying yes to things that you really don't want to say yes to, if you are able to recognize that and you mindfully choose to set a boundary, when you do that mindfully, you are then saying to yourself that it's okay to set that boundary, that you are deserving of setting that boundary. It's safe to set that boundary. And again, each time you're chipping away at that belief of being unworthy, undeserving, or not enough. Every time, literally. People often think that healing happens in these really big moments, that we have to do something incredibly significant in order for any change to happen. And that's simply not true. Most healing happens moment to moment. And the seemingly small decisions that we make, even when we're feeling afraid, even when we feel uncertain of the outcome, even when we feel panicked about the mindful choice we just made. I've known so many people over the years, and I've been there too, who will make a decision to do something for themselves, whether it's setting a boundary or sleeping in, calling into work when you're not feeling well. And you do that, you think, okay, I'm going to do the healthy thing and I'm going to honor myself and do this. And then you do it and you feel this sense of panic or dread that comes up. And immediately then, naturally, you feel like it was a mistake. It was the wrong thing to do. But the panic or that dread, that fear, doesn't mean it was the wrong thing. Now, there is intuition, and sometimes that can play an important role. But in this circumstance, when you're not used to honoring yourself, that dread or panic is rarely because you've done something wrong or bad or the outcome is going to be bad. In fact, rarely is that ever the case. That fear or panic is because you're doing something outside of your comfort zone. You're doing something that you're not used to doing, and that inherently feels risky and uncomfortable. But we can't ever believe and trust in our worthiness if we are not honoring who we are and what we want and what we need. And there is a difference between what we want and what we need. But what we want is not really less important than what we need. For survival, that may be true. It may be true in terms of survival that needs are more important than wants. But when it comes to how we feel about ourselves and how we live in our daily lives, what we want matters too. So yes, we need to nourish our body. We need to get sleep. Like, there are things that we need for sure that we need to be mindful of. But there are also things that we want that are important to honor as well. Like connection, which I would argue is an actual need. Certainly a need to be happy, to feel fulfilled, to feel joy. But we might want connection. We might want to have some alone time, or we might want to go out and hang out with friends. That is also important to acknowledge. You might want to be surrounded by things that feel energizing or comforting. And it's important to honor that. Maybe what you want looks a little different than what somebody else wants. It doesn't make them right and you wrong, or you right and them wrong. It's about honoring what is true and present for you. And if you are not able to have what you want or need in a given moment, being mindful about recognizing that it's not because you're not deserving of it, because that's where we often go. Like if we want a vacation, but we don't have the financial resources or the time to do it, we can often internalize that as, I'm not somebody who's deserving of a vacation, which is not true, but it's easy for that to be reinforced. So if that's something that you desire, but it's not available to you right now, being able to recognize that that does not mean that you're not deserving of it. If you reach out to a friend because you're struggling and they're not available, same thing, recognizing that their inavailability isn't because you're not deserving of the connection with them or the support by them. It doesn't mean anything about that. It just means that they're not available. So how we think about this, the fact that we intentionally think about it, plays such an important role in how we feel about ourselves, literally feelings that we have about ourselves, and of course, what we believe to be true about ourselves. So every act of taking care of yourself that you mindfully choose, or even if you do something that beforehand you don't necessarily consider self-care, but afterward you reflect on it and you recognize that that was self-care, that you wanted something or you needed something and you did something to make it happen. Being able to reflect on that and recognize that as self-care, that it was okay that you did it, that it was important that you did it, that you are worthy of doing it, that can also help. So it doesn't have to be only things that you recognize before. It can be things after, because in reality, as you heal, you will naturally do things that are self-care related without having to think about it ahead of time. That's one of the things of healing, or one of the pieces of healing. And the fact that you don't necessarily recognize it as self-care is what healing looks like, because you're not having to consciously remind yourself over and over and over again, because it's become part of your natural way of being in the world, part of your natural way of honoring yourself in a day-to-day way. So as you think about self-care, and I actually started thinking about doing this video during my time off, because I was thinking about the new year, and I'm not somebody who does resolutions, but I always like to think about it still in kind of a fresh start, writing 2022 at the end of a date. It's a whole new year of doing that. So I like to think about intention, about what do I want to feel this year? And a couple weeks ago, I thought about what I want to feel, and I want to feel nourished. I want to feel this deep sense of nourishment in my body, in my heart, in my soul. And I thought about wanting that for all of you as well. And thinking about, how do we get there? How do we feel nourished? And whether it is being hydrated, being connected, being rested, feeling secure in our relationships with boundaries, whatever it is, that comes from honoring yourself. And when I think of self-care, that is such an important part of what that is. It's simply an honoring of yourself, your feelings, your desires, your needs. And honoring your feelings is just allowing your feelings to be. Don't judge. Don't even necessarily try to change it. In fact, not judging your feelings is such a big part of healing as well. Most of us are pretty judgmental about how we feel. But if we can just be with and honor the fact that we feel whatever it is we feel, that is a form of self-care. And there is healing that happens when we create space for that feeling, when we create space for our needs and desires. So I'd love to encourage you to consider, what do you want to feel this year? And maybe you identify several feelings. Maybe they're feelings that you have already felt, but you want to continue that, or maybe deepen into those feelings. Take a few moments, maybe pause the video right now, or after the video is done, take a few moments and just sit and notice what comes up for you. Maybe write down or into a voice recorder, what do you want to feel in 2022? Identify maybe 1 to 3 or 5 feelings that you want to feel. And my guess is that whatever those feelings are, self-care is going to be a part of that. Even if you want to feel adventurous, self-care is going to be a part of that, because you're going to need to create time. You're going to need to give yourself the space to be adventurous. You're going to need to honor your feelings about things and not put limits on what you believe is possible for you. So it doesn't have to be kind of the more serious or challenging kinds of feelings or opposite of challenging feelings. It can be something fun or enjoyable, like adventure. But whatever those feelings are, notice, where does self-care come into that? And then, how can you try to incorporate some aspect of that in your regular life? Maybe it's not all every day, but maybe every day there's something that you can do to honor yourself, to help you get to that place where you can feel that feeling that you desire. I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments. What did you notice coming up for you? Self-care can be a kind of a word that can bring up a lot of resistance, even sadness a lot of times, and grief, because so many people experience such a lack of self-care. But I'd love to hear what your feelings for this year might be. Share in the comments. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up so that other people can find it too. This channel has always been about being on a mission to help people understand that healing is possible. And over the years, that mission is still part of it, but it's really kind of expanded a little bit to wanting people to not just believe that healing is possible, but to experience healing. And I know from hearing from so many of you and ultimately working with some of you, I know that we can, as we heal ourselves, we shift the dynamic that we have with everybody else. And that's how we create a community, a family, ultimately a world of people who believe in their worthiness and feel free. And people that feel free and joyful show up differently in life. And imagine what could be different if we all felt safe enough within ourselves to feel that sense of freedom as we go about our day and our daily lives and interact with people. That is what this is about. So make sure you subscribed and click the little bell for notifications. And I'm recording this in January of 2022. So if you are watching this before February 5th of 2022, I would love to invite you to join me for a Deeply Rooted workshop. It's free to those who have purchased Deeply Rooted, and it actually only open to those who have purchased Deeply Rooted. But I will be guiding you through some of the practices, and we'll have a lot of Q&A as well. So there's more details in the description below. So thank you for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Have a beautiful day.